think he does the recording.
I can see the thing.
Abby lives on the other side of the mill pond,
Okay.
so she has to see the new garage and where this
Okay.
new building is gonna go.
Okay, thank you.
This appeal
Right.
process
Gonna
with this new housing appeal
Start
board.
the January 12th,
Politics of
2022.
that, How the real estate community.
22.
You got the right
Oh,
agenda?
yeah, no, I don't. I have the minutes, sorry. Start the February 9th, 2022 regular meeting of the Conservation Commission. Welcome. Our first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. But before that, I just wanted to welcome a new member, Mika Court. And this will be your first Conservation Commission member in person, but we also are short one member today. So as an alternate, you would be okay to vote if you want to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the first item, does anybody want to make a motion for the approval of the minutes?
I have a correction.
Okay, we can do
How does that go?
usually motion corrections, but
Okay. The motion to, okay. I didn't know what the motion was, to approve it or to go over the discussion of the minutes. Okay.
yeah, then we'll do the discussion
Okay,
afterwards.
got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to
Maybe
approve the
you've got
minutes with a
notice
couple of
about a new member,
corrections.
too.
Okay, anybody want a second? Second by Henry. And discussion.
One that caught my eye is that on page 5, suddenly Mr. Gindel was questioned. So I would hope that my dad didn't show up because he's dead, so. So I would say, just, that's the only typo I found, but, and that's the kind of thing that would catch my eye very quickly and easily.
I have one on page 1. On the very last line of the last paragraph, Mr. Jankowski felt there were more things that he could accomplish, not was. And then on page 3, on the third full paragraph down, it says, just a misspelling of aquifers,
Okay.
groundwater aquifers. And Mr. DeFossis responded that the site was at 60 to 70 feet of elevation from sea level. On page 4, the second line down, the work will be on the bottom where the sediment is deposited. Instead of, if you leave "be" out, it doesn't make sense. On page 5, under the stipulations, the first one should utilize a wetland seed mix, not utilized wetland seed mix. And then on page 6, the third paragraph, full paragraph down, it says they don't have to spend cash if have they, and it should be reversed, if they have. And then take out give a bond authorization.
Okay.
So they don't have to spend the cash if they have a bond authorization.
Okay.
Then on page 7, it says that the city has requested funding for a full-time sustainability coordinator, and it's not the city, it was a committee that had requested that to occur. And it should be Mayor McEachern, not Councilor McEachern. I can just give this to you, Peter.
Great.
Okay.
Okay,
And that was all I had.
thank you.
Thank you.
No, I did, which is I don't think you're listed as present. Counselor Melich, I was thinking maybe you caught on that one.
I look for my name elsewhere, but not as a front.
I was like, oh, there she is. I figured that would be yours, but, so add that. And then on page 3, first paragraph, halfway down towards the end, the sentence comes in other areas will have concrete. It's just it should be other areas will have not in other areas.
Okay.
I think. Oh, sorry, right here. And then page 6, I have one second official paragraph that begins with Mr. Britt's, this paragraph.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, you
on
got it,
there.
you got that one. So we're good. Any others? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I gotta do a roll call, right?
Technically, yes.
Sorry about that.
No, it's
Want me to
okay.
do it, I can.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so all those in favor, Ms. Kendall?
Yes, aye, whatever.
Ms. Tanner?
Yes.
Chair McMillan?
Yes.
Malinchuk? Mr. Jankowski? Ms. Court? Ms. Wright?
Yes,
Ms. Collins, sorry, did I call her Wright or Collins?
that's okay. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, no, I got it right. So unanimous.
Unanimous. Motion passes with the changes. Next item on the agenda is the wetland conditional use permit, new business, 1054 Banfield Road. Charlene McDermott is the owner. Anybody here to speak to that? Okay, you can take the podium, just introduce yourself, and
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark White. I'm the GC for the project at 1054 Banfield Road. The owner, Sherry McDermott, sit behind me.
Mark, I have your application here. If you want me to go to anything in it, I'll bring it up on the screen.
Good.
Hopefully, let's see, it's not coming. There we go. Should be coming. So, let's see, where are we? Is that you? Yeah. I'll try to zoom in. Okay, and if you want to go to photo, if you're going to get anything else, just let me know and I can try to get to it.
Okay. So this is a picture of the area view of the existing conditions, and it highlights the wetlands and the wetlands buffer. You want me to point to it, or?
There's a pointer there. Just whatever you do, don't touch that screen over there. It's a touch screen. It'll mess everything up. But there's a pointer there. I think it should be on the.
See it?
Nothing there? There you go. Yeah, I think it's. If you hold that top one, it'll turn into something.
All right. I didn't know it was going to be high-tech here. So over here is the wetlands, highlighted in yellow. And this is the wetlands buffer that, as you see, goes right through the breezeway of the house. And basically what we're asking to do is increase the size of the garage and the breezeway. But in doing that, there's actually an existing asphalt beside the garage. And our addition actually would just take up that space as far as the garage goes. And the breezeway, we're basically proposing to make it wider. It would be the same width as the house. Right now, it's like 10'4" wide, or
10-6.
yeah, 10'6" wide. And we're proposing to widen it to the existing size of the house, which is 28'6". Excuse me, I'm very nervous.
that's okay.
Public speaking
I
is
totally get
public
that.
speaking is my biggest fear probably in life.
You're doing fine.
Great, thanks. So, any questions from you guys? I'm not sure where to go from here. Go ahead.
Normally, when we receive plans like this, we get, we gain an understanding of how the building is going to be what the construction is going to look like when it's done and things like that. And I'm not talking about the house design, but what I'm talking about is like you're proposing to dig a French drain, basically. And you say that it's going to be 8 by 4 feet deep and lined with landscape fabric, but What are you
Yeah,
doing?
dry well,
what
yes.
are you doing with everything that you dug out of the hole?
It would probably be, depending on what, I don't know what the soil is right now. Depending on the soil, if it's clay, I'm gonna haul it out of there. And if it's suitable drainage material, then I'll just leave it there and fill. I have actually a big, low area behind the garage. So I could actually just leave it there and fill that area up.
Okay, so,
If it's good drainage soil, if not, I'm gonna haul it off.
okay, and I assume that you received a copy of the note that Peter put together regarding this is the staff memo. Did you get a copy of that?
I don't have it,
Okay, well,
recall it actually.
another
I'm saying
thing.
I didn't get it, but
I didn't send it to him. I usually just put it on the website,
Okay.
and I probably didn't even, I don't know if I told you about it.
I don't think I've read it, no.
Well, the other thing, because you're so close to a wetland and you're actually in the buffer and you're doing this digging, what we need to have are erosion control measures in place.
Uh-huh.
So there are different materials like the core logs. That would probably be a good one. You just lay it off outside the bounds of where you're planning to disturb so that
Right.
everything that you're digging up
Basically,
and moving
a silt
doesn't
fence, basically,
just
right?
flow back into the wetland.
Yep,
We don't want to fill it up with sediment.
yep, there would be a silt fence installed prior to,
And then you said in here that you were going to be doing some planting of blueberry bushes?
yeah, it's a little area up by the Banfield Road that's mowed right up near a little brook.
Can you point it out on the map?
Yeah,
Because I was
thank-
curious about that too, the high bush, right?
That would be
Oh,
that
okay,
area
that's
right
right.
here.
Okay.
It's actually outside of Sherry's property line. It's kind of like right here. But the previous owners have been mowing it. And our proposal was to turn that back into a more natural state. The blueberry bushes,
Yeah, we appreciate that.
yeah,
Not being mowed is really important.
right, right.
Thank you. Other questions?
I'm concerned that your property is so close to the wetlands.
Yep,
And, it's good that you're building over something that's impervious.
Right.
That's a net improvement, I guess.
Yeah.
But many people, applicants that come before us, we refer them to the NOFA Organic Lawn Care Standards. It's called the Northeast Association of Organic Farmers.
yeah, I
And
read a little bit about that.
yeah, and they have a published standards, you can just look it up online, and they have three sort of approaches. You just, one that is approved by them is what you want to use. So
Yep.
take a look at it, and we would ask that as part of this application, that you follow organic lawn care practices or in that part of the property.
Yeah, in the buffer zone,
Okay,
yeah. Which is fertilization and,
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, yes,
or lack of fertilization.
yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Barbara, I have a question.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Vice Commissioner Collins?
Yeah, when rainwater falls on your driveway, which direction does it flow?
It mostly, the driveway pitches fairly, like, probably 4 to 5% towards Banfield Road. So most of the water runs towards Banfield Road. And then once it gets
Okay.
there, it kind of branches off to the, kind of where this little area I was talking about, the grass area. At the end of the driveway, it kind of pitches towards that area there.
Okay,
So it comes
thank
down the
you.
driveway, then pitches, I don't know what that would be, east on
Okay.
Banfield Road.
Okay, thank you.
Something else.
Yes.
So the other thing is that you don't say anything about the deck, I believe, and I'm just wondering, when you're talking about bringing the breezeway out to the length of the house, you're just getting rid of the deck, is that the
Correct.
deal? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I don't really have a question, but, and maybe this is what Ted was getting to, and I couldn't quite hear it all. I noticed you've got a lot of lawn in the backyard, and I didn't know if you're interested in planting any of it out, but if you planted in the buffer zone, sort of more of the high bush blue, not necessarily them, but just more plantings, then you just, you know, just a thought, suggestion, you know. Anyway, just because then you've just got better action going on for the lawn and,
Sure.
you know, the whole backyard in general. But you know, maybe
There is a fairly
you don't
good-
want any plantings, so.
There is a fairly good buffer zone once you get back that far. But if that's something you guys would want me to do, we
I was just
certainly
thinking,
could.
yeah, in the fenced-in area, but, you know, maybe you've got something and you don't want any, whole lot of plants.
Yeah, we could
but
easily do
anyway,
a strip next to the fence there and,
Yeah,
you know,
okay, yeah, anyway.
I think that would be fine.
I had a question about, also about your dry well that you're going to do, the 8 by 8 by 4 feet deep. So you don't know what the soil is like right now? You don't know if it,
We do not, she just bought it in the fall and we haven't done any perk tests or any digging or anything, so
okay,
not
so
sure.
if you are digging that hole to take the runoff from the roof through the gutters, if there's a big storm, and if it is like very clay-like material, that won't, do you have an overflow, a way for it to, how does it,
Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. If you design it so it can handle all the rain that comes off the roof, then you don't need an overflow. But I guess you never know with weather around here, right? So you could put a overflow research, and you can put an overflow on the very top. If it fills up, it comes up to the lawn level and disperses from there.
it
And
has,
from there, if that, for a backup, it's almost a little, you can't see it on this, but it's really a low spot right there where I plan on putting a dry well. But as you go towards the fence, I could actually put a swale. So even if the water did come out of the dry well, it could stay up on top of the lawn and not drain off.
that's fine, yeah,
Yeah,
as long as the area is vegetated and,
yes.
and
Well,
then,
it would be grass in this area.
okay, right
It would be
around
a
it.
swale up towards the fence, so it keeps the water in the lawn instead of washing out to the wetlands.
There is a swale, or did you say?
No, I would, when we put the dry well in, I would make a swale. So keep the water from running off rapidly. Am
Yeah, I don't know how the
I
other
not
commission,
making sense?
yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I don't know how the other
So
commissioners.
right around
feel
the
about
fence
that.
area, instead of letting once it overflows, the dry well overflows and just runs off to the wetlands buffer or wetlands, I would have a swale, a little higher area of soil to keep the water in above the dry well. Give it another chance to percolate off.
Yeah. Yeah, if you did that, we'd want to see that on the plan. And I don't know how the other commissioners
Well,
would feel about
that was more of a, you asked that question, so I
Right,
think
right.
that would be a way to
Right.
mitigate that.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, that's one good reason to put extra plantings there, too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I was,
that's a good point.
Yeah. I think I mean, this is personally, I think the plantings, and the other commissioners can chime in, that plantings would be the best.
Yes.
And seeing like a planting plan for that, to give to the planning board when you see them.
Yeah,
To
that's
show
a-
where you're going to plant things and,
So we could do a line of plants right up against that fence.
'cause if
That's
you
what
do,
you're suggesting, right?
yeah, I think it gets complicated if you do a swale, just because you'll be filling in the buffer then
Uh-huh.
and near the wetland to do that. But
Okay.
other people might chime in on that too. But the other question I had is, Commissioner Tanner had asked about what you were going to do with the dirt when you take it out of there, and you mentioned maybe putting it behind the garage.
No, whatever I dug out for the live well, dry well, if it was suitable drainage soil, I would just leave it and raise up that whole area. But if it's like clay or impenetrable soil, I would haul it out of sight, pull it off.
So if you are going to keep it on site and it's going to be in the buffer area, it would be good to have some sort of best management practices to reduce erosion while it's there before it gets vegetated, or if you're going to leave it, I assume you won't want it bare soil, so I don't know if you'd be covering it with stone or grass seed, or,
Yeah, with grass seed for sure.
yeah, or you could pull it out of the buffer. Yeah.
Yeah, it would all be grass seeded. So where I dig out the dry well, it's gonna have a layer of loam soil. So whatever I dig out of that could actually just fill in around that, and we could seed the whole area, if it's suitable. Most likely I'm gonna be hauling it off, but until you actually dig it and figure out, if it's well-drained soil, then I might as well just leave it there, because I think it'd be a benefit. But if it's clay, I think it'd be beneficial to haul it off.
Can I just
Yeah, go
add?
ahead. Yeah.
Just so you know, when you're going to need to put a location for the dry well on your plan.
Yeah,
When you give me the planting plan, you can bring that to me before as soon as you can, so we can get it on the planning board's packet.
yeah.
But can you point to where the dry well is going to go, where you're planning to put it? Just make sure the commissioners are aware of that and are comfortable with it. So right behind the addition.
Thinking there's a little low area right there, and that's where I'm thinking it would go.
So if the commission's okay with that, I can have them add it to because we want to see that on the plan that gets approved, so you got that, so no one comes out and says, well, there's no approval for this dry well. So
Right.
I think everybody's okay with it as long as you put it on the plan. So
Yes.
if you can add that to the plan with your plantings,
Makes perfect sense.
I
Yep.
can make sure the planning board has that, and then your planning board process will go through with that.
Yes.
Because you have to go
Sounds good.
see them.
Yep, makes sense.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes, sorry.
you're gonna have to estimate for a phosphor, right? You're gonna have to estimate for a phosphor, a foundation.
Do I have for the frost wall?
Yeah, you're gonna have to estimate soil, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand you.
You have to excavate the soil for the frost wall.
Yep,
And what are you gonna do with that soil?
sorry, I'm still not picking it up.
What will you do with that soil?
What are we gonna do with that soil?
Yeah.
Well, any excess soil that I don't need to backfill around the foundation will be hauled off, most likely. I don't plan on filling anything on the property at all. Yep. I don't think there's going to be any left over, actually, time I fill up the garage floor. I don't think it'll be minimal. It's not like digging a house foundation where you have all that excess soil. It's a garage mostly. And even the breezeway is not going to have a full foundation. It's just going to have a frost wall. So you won't be taking out that much.
So the only place you'd be putting it is around the foundation, nowhere else within the property.
Around the foundation, whatever's left over, probably haul it out of there.
Okay. Right,
But
thank
I think that's going to be minimal, if any.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No. People want to make a motion? Thank Commissioner Tanner.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the planning board with the following stipulations. To add plantings along the fence, to use erosion control measures, and follow NOFA standards regarding lawn care. You also need to remember to just provide a planting plan and the actual location for the dry well on your plans.
Yep.
Did you mention erosion control?
I did, that was the second one, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Seconded? Commissioner Jankowski seconds it. Any discussion?
No.
Nope.
We do a roll call?
Yeah, we want to do.
When you're ready.
Yeah, and you could see Samantha, right? She raises her
Samantha,
hand.
I'm sorry, did you have any questions? I don't think so. She didn't have her hand up.
Okay.
Nope,
definitely
I'm
can.
good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, we do a roll call vote? Go ahead.
Ms. Kendall?
Yes.
Tanner?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes?
Malchuk?
Yeah.
Jankowski?
Yes.
Ms. Court? Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you so much.
Do you want your little photo books
Yeah,
back
do
to
you-
give to
Yeah,
the,
if you want to for the, like, the planning board or whatever?
Sure.
Yeah, good idea.
Quite a few, right? Reduce the stuff.
She got that one? There's more down there.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the State Wetland Bureau application, major impact application, 390 Newcastle Ave and 393 Newcastle Ave. Anybody here to speak to that?
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Riker from AMBA Engineering. Here today on behalf of 393 Newcastle Avenue LLC is the property owner. Just want to clarify that that is the name of the property owner. The project site is at 390 Newcastle Avenue, so could be a little bit of confusion there on ownership and property location. I am here today to present the project, get some feedback. Ultimately, DES will be looking for a letter from this commission addressing comments that this commission may have for the DES Wetlands Bureau evaluation of the application. It has been submitted. It is currently under review. The proposal is to construct a tidal dock on this property. A couple of commissioners here may recall I was here, I think 4 or 5 years ago now, for some redevelopment on this site. This is the site of what used to be the old toll house that historically collected tolls before you went across the bridge to Newcastle. So this is that small little lot that you see there when you drive by. We are proposing a tidal docking structure here. Let me just,
Steve, if you want me to go to any other sections of your application, just let me know.
I will, yeah, I just want to pull my little plan set out so I can explain the components of the dock. So sheet C1 is the existing conditions plan, which is really, for all intents and purposes, is the DES permit plan with the dock laid on. It consists of a 4x30 fixed pier, a 3x25 foot gangway, and a 10x20 float. The float is located with what are called float piles. So 2 piles will be driven in the substrate. That keeps the float in place. The gangway is fixed to the pier portion of the structure, and on the bottom where it extends out to the float, it has a set of rollers on the bottom of the gangway. So as the tide fluctuates up and down, the gangway is on rollers and it's allowed to roll on the float to accommodate that tide fluctuation. Moving to sheet D1, which is the detail sheet, shows the dock in profile view as well as plan view. In the profile view, we've placed it on tidal datum with mean low water at elevation 0. You can see we also have mean high water. We have highest observable tide line. We also have, per DES rules, the predicted sea level rise elevation in year 2100, which would be 11.33. DES wants us to include that so that we demonstrate that we're designing this structure to be above the predicted sea level rise in the year 2100. The fixed pier portion of the dock is a wooden fixed pier. It's supported by wooden piles. There will be 6 of those. Those piles are installed with a vibratory hammer, not a traditional impact hammer. so they use vibration to install the piles. The piles are installed. The other portions of the structure, including the fixed pier and the gangway and the float, are all prefabricated off-site. They're located onto a barge. So after the piles are driven, essentially there would be two 15-foot sections of the pier that are already prefabricated. They're lowered onto the piles and the pile caps, and they're fastened in place. Same thing with the gangway. The gangway is already prefabricated in a separate location, and it's on the barge, and it's lowered into place by a crane and fastened. So a dock of this length, not very long, not very big. Construction on site is probably 3 to 4 days. Obviously, tides are important. All work will be done at low tide. In this specific location where this dock is going, there will be no water in this location at low tide. The entire structure is located over mudflat. A couple other things I do want to mention. There is some marsh elder on site. Marsh elder is an endangered species in New Hampshire. We have survey located the locations of the marsh elder. They're depicted on the plans. You can see directly behind the one-story wood frame. There are a few areas of marsh elder there. And then actually over near Newcastle Avenue, off the property, there is another little clump of marsh elder that we've located. As a result, I've had to coordinate with the New Hampshire Heritage Bureau. I have sent them plans. They have reviewed, and they are fine with the project. The other thing that I've had to coordinate is New Hampshire Fish and Game with impacts to sturgeon. Since all of the piles that will be driven to support this structure are located above mean low water, which basically means they will be driven when there is no water in that location, Fish and Game has determined there's no impacts to sturgeon, and we have an email for that. Department of Historical Resources has okayed the project as well. The last item I'm waiting from anybody outside of DES is this commission, and the local harbor master reviews these applications for any navigational impacts. I've sent that to him. He typically does take some time to get back to me, so I'm not surprised that I haven't heard yet, but I'm sure I will soon. I think I've covered most on the plans that I wanted to. The application itself has a photo log, lots of maps, eelgrass maps, shellfish maps. I did also want to mention that when I was here a few years ago for work in the uplands, there was a buffer landscape area that was part of that approval process. As you can see, the access way portion of this fixed pier is going to land in that landscaping area. So we're going to basically move that and replace it, just that section that's being impacted, which is really like probably 15 square feet. There's some nice, well-developed shrubs that the owner had put in. They're pretty healthy and they're nice, and I suggested that he just relocate them to a different area, and we're showing that on the plan. I think that's all I have. I'm sure you'll have questions. These are pretty technical, heavy type set of plans.
Thank you. And Commissioner, questions?
I have one, Barbara.
Commissioner Tanner?
So this is a really small piece of property. Where's that float going to be stored in the winter?
Yeah, great question. So, well, I don't know for sure. I can give you what I think will happen. They tow them off-site, and they store them. So,
Okay.
there's a local marine entity, Pepperell Cove Marine. That's what they do. They are running out of space, though. I can tell you that. So it's a battle to make the phone call early and get in their queue. So they show up on site and they basically detach the float and they tow it off site. Most people then take the gangway and they store it on the pier itself. So, given there's not a lot of room to store it on site, it's probably where it's
Yeah, I
headed.
was going to say, there's like no room.
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions?
I guess I do want to add, to sort of add on to Allison's question, for the commissioners that don't know, it is a seasonal structure. So what that means is in the non-boating season, the gangway and the float are removed. They're not in the water.
I just had a question, if you could speak a little bit to the marsh elder, what they asked you to do, or what kind of response you got?
It's a good question. I mean, NHB only seems to be concerned. I've worked on other projects where marsh elder's been present, as long as you're not placing the pier directly over the top of it, or very close to it where there might be some shading. There's typically no concerns. Or if you're directly impacting it.
Okay. And then also you had sent sort of information about the pier, the pilings being what they're made of, I guess?
The safety data sheet?
Yeah.
Yes, yep, that's required. It's part of the DS rules now.
Yeah. So are there alternatives to that? Because I mean, I did go online to see if there were alternatives. It does seem like there is, but, I mean, is there?
There are, but the wood is safe. That's what the safety data sheet demonstrates.
Yeah.
The alternatives are fiberglass. The fiberglass pile is driven, but then it's filled with concrete and rebar, so then you have metal and concrete in the water too. The fiberglass piles are extremely expensive, but they last much longer. So that is the other alternative that I'm aware of that's used in New England.
And I guess I'm just thinking of the marsh elder, but I guess, and my other question is, the size of the concrete blocks, did you have that in there? You probably did.
There's no mooring blocks used in this
Oh,
construction.
okay.
Thought I saw that.
I
So
saw
the-
that in there somewhere.
Yeah,
It might have been a there
Yeah.
could be a typo.
I think it says that in there.
Yeah, I saw
That-
I was wondering about that because
That
it
very
did
well could be.
talk about pilings too.
Yeah, this float will be located with piles. So the two piles, if you look at sheet C2, the piles are driven. It's basically called what's called a U-bar or a U-hoop. It's a galvanized hoop. It goes around the pile itself and attaches to the float. Float can't go anywhere.
And then there was a pile under the float as well, right?
Yeah, great point. I forgot to mention that. Yeah,
Does
so
that from settling in the mud?
yeah, so there's DS and the federal U.S. Army Corps of Engineers requires what are called float stops. So they drive piles underneath the location of the float. They're cut at a height of 24 inches because that's the minimum the float needs to stay off the mud at low tide. So what that basically provides is a platform. The float comes down with the tide, and the tide recedes and the water leaves. You basically have four piles that stick out of the substrate, and the float rests on that instead of the entire float resting on the mud at low tide. And obviously the impacts associated with that.
Barbara, was your concern about the wood pilings, that they're treated with something that would be,
Yeah, I just wanted to know if they thought of alternatives or if there are alternatives.
because I was wondering about the treatment of it, because those things can be pretty toxic, but obviously they're being used, but,
Yeah,
Yep, the treatment is not soluble in water, and it's in the safety data sheet.
okay.
yeah. So, like, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from anybody else? No?
No, I just had a general comment, though, when I'm reading through this, and you get the state assessment of things, and what strikes me kind of, I don't know, it seems very micro viewed, is that they're looking at just the construction process. And, I mean, I was looking at the map, and there are docks all over, but it's like, they don't talk about boat traffic ever. It seems
That's the harbor masters issue.
Okay.
They're the ones that look at that and
But I mean, in
decide.
terms of environmental impact, do the harbor master look at boat traffic environmentally, or just like?
No, just
you
like
know-
how it's going to impede traffic and things
Right,
like
okay,
that.
so that I don't care, if boats are running into each other, that's on them. But I sort of, I sort of, the environmental impact never goes beyond construction of things. And I'm just speaking generally, just all of the things I've been going through. They don't seem to sort of, when you've got this, you're inviting human interaction, and they don't seem to talk about that. But anyway, that's not really, it'd be nice to, if the state would sort of address that more in their, or whoever else, us for that matter, address those issues, extended impact, I guess. Anyway, that's it.
No, good point.
One of the discussions we've had in the past, Abby, when new docks have gone in, we feel terrible that everybody has to have their own dock, Why could you just have a dock and have, 5 families share it or something like that?
Yeah.
But there's really, the way state law works right now, there's really not, there was no easy methodology to accomplish that.
Yeah.
On a related note with the wood and how it's treated, over time, how do they care for this wood? Does it require reapplication? Would it be off-site? How is that?
Nope, there's no reapplication. Certainly, the treatment may obviously not be as effective 20, 30 years, and then the pile itself starts to wear and get smaller and smaller and smaller, and then at some point they need to be replaced. Yep. They seem to last here in New England. For permits that I've submitted for pile replacement, 30, 35 years max on the piles. Seems to be the age of the structures that I'm doing a lot of replacements on, just to give you an idea. And I think some of that's location dependent. A lot of them get beat up by ice.
Because it sounds like they're safe, that the real danger is from actually the treatment itself. So if it has to be done, it would be done off-site.
Correct, yeah. So the marine contractor that will be installing this dock, they buy them pre-treated. They arrive on a truck. They buy them by the hundreds. They're already pre-treated. The treatment needs to be applied, on land, not near water. And then once it dries, it's not water soluble anymore. If you really dive into the data sheet, basically it says that the only harm is if you're cutting it and you're breathing in the sawdust. So.
Good questions. Anything else?
It's all
Samantha?
on this safety.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
about
I guess
9
not.
pages.
No. Okay, no questions. All right.
I used to vote
Do you want to have a motion?
It's overtime.
Not too many now.
Commissioner Tanner?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the State Wetlands Board with 2 stipulations. One is that the float is stored off-site, and the second is that those plants that are dug up are relocated somewhere on the property.
Okay. Great. Anybody want to second that? Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Or Ted, or Henry.
Commissioner Gendale, thank you. Second in discussion.
I was just saying, the Marshall is not very close to where the dock is, so I don't really have a concern with that.
Okay, thank you. No? I just was going to say, I'm going to vote in favor of it, but it's such a shame because that's such a tiny, tiny lot there. And I remember, it was just this little tiny building, and it's just sort of now getting a little out of control with a dock and everything. But it follows the rules, so it's too bad because it's just another dock.
Is it a seasonal, you said it was just used seasonally? Is it a summer rental or
That's the only
something?
way, the structure on the lot, I have
The structure?
I have no
Because
idea.
I drove by and I was like, oh, that's really small.
Yeah, it's quite small, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even the building, so I was curious.
Yes.
Who's there?
Yeah, actually,
There are a couple kayaks outside on it.
correct. I think it's going to be more for kayak use.
Yeah.
Personally, it's not going to have a lot of tide access, just based on location and water depth there, so probably likely kayak use. I did want to point out that this particular site utilized porous asphalt, so it's down, so when you drive by there, take a look at it. It
Oh, good.
seems to be functioning pretty well. Every time I drive by, I look at it. It's interesting to me, especially in the winter now. You can see sort of how the
Yeah, that's,
you know, how ice might build up on it or not.
Yeah, it seems,
I think
it's
it's-
quite clean and everything when I was.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a plowing nightmare for the owner, you know, with also with Newcastle Avenue, like, and that's in that configuration, you know, I'm sure it gets a lot of plowed snow from the road, so
Yeah, yeah.
he's certainly busy trying to clear that, but just something to keep in mind when you drive by there. It's kind of cool.
And I just wanted to add, it doesn't have to be a condition, but just to check your application to see where it says that there are
Yeah.
concrete
good-
blocks, please.
Good point.
Yeah.
You think it's in there?
I think I know where that might
I
be,
saw it
but
in there, yeah.
I'll take a look. It was in the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
yeah.
Take a note here. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Is there a roll call?
Ready for a roll call?
Kendall?
Yes.
Ms. Tanner?
Yes.
Ms. McMillan?
Yes.
Mr. Melanchuk?
Yeah.
Mr. Jankowski? Ms. Fort?
Yes.
And Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Yeah, have a great
Sarah.
night.
Oh, yeah, here they are.
Oh, there they are. Yeah, they didn't want to say that. Okay, next item on the agenda is a work session with 230 Commerce Way. Somebody's here to speak to that if you want to. Feel free to take the podium and introduce yourself when you're ready.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. My name is Neil Hansen, project manager with Ty and Bond. Brendan Walden from Go Environmental is also here and will be speaking to this project. So the proposed project we're looking at doing is a 2-story office building at 230 Commerce Way. Go to the two sheets ahead, please. Thank you. So this is the existing condition of the site. Currently, there's a 3-story office building towards the front of the site, and then a large surface parking lot in the rear of the site. And then there's a wetland that is between the rear parking area and Portsmouth Boulevard, which we will be having impacts to the 100-foot buffer as part of this project. So as you can see on this, the 100-foot buffer extends into that existing parking area. There's approximately 3,000 square feet of pavement currently in that buffer. And then part of this project will include pulling a large portion of that pavement out of the buffer. So you go to the next sheet, please. So this is the preliminary site plan. As I mentioned, this is a 2-story proposed office building. The first floor would be a veterinary clinic use, and then the second floor would just be general office space. Along with that would be some reconfiguration of the existing parking area, and as I mentioned previously, we'll be pulling a large chunk of the existing pavement out of the buffer, along with some buffer restoration work along the edges of the pavement. We'll also be adding a new driveway to the site directly off of Portsmouth Boulevard. And then along with this, we'll be having obviously the utilities, sewer, water, gas, and adding a stormwater treatment system to this rear area of the site. What we'll be doing exactly for stormwater treatment is kind of still up in the air because we're still too early on in the process to have made any determinations on that. One of our main constraints, though, as far as that goes, is we did some geotechnical assessments out on the site, I believe it was last week, and did find that the bedrock out there is extremely shallow. So that will be a bit of a limiting factor as far as what we can and cannot do for stormwater. So that's a quick overview of the at least the preliminary plan, and I'll let Brendan come up here and speak a little bit to the wetlands and the buffers that are on the site.
So I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the 230 Commerce on the top piece of that. We just recently went through some work there with you guys. Most of the existing site now, all that stormwater is draining untreated and going to the bottom of the pit, northwestern side wetland. That wetland primarily is invasive species right now. It's all Phragmites and not super high value. There is a stream that runs on the southern side down to the northwest that drains into that wetland.
Can
Is
you
that-
Can you
show
use the
that?
pointer?
Yeah, use the pointer.
And can you get a little closer to the mic?
Yeah.
Is it just
top-
me that can't hear him very well?
The top button on that should, yeah.
Okay.
So where's the stream?
So this portion right here is a stream, this wetland that flows down out behind the market basket. That takes all this wetland drainage and brings it down and eventually flows. It has some contribution from this that outlets further down off-site. Right now, there is elevated berms along these portions of the site that assist in directing most of the drainage down into this wetland here. Primarily by redeveloping this site, there's going to be no changes to the functions and values of the wetlands as a whole. The only benefit that they'll be receiving is additional stormwater treatment from any design that they provide. There's not really a whole lot more on the wetlands. Yes.
Well, it looks like the roadway is going to go right through an area that's treed right now.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah, so what you're talking about right
Yes,
through
yeah.
here. Yeah, so we are proposing to put a new driveway out to Portsmouth Boulevard. That tree line that's shown on this plan is not, it's not exact. We are working on getting updated survey at the moment. So the exact location of that tree line will be actually surveyed, but the tree line shown there is just approximate at this point, because I think, yeah, so, as we get further into this design and get the actual survey, that limit will be more clearly defined of where that tree line actually is
Well,
at the moment.
is there a reason that you can't use the
Yeah.
Commerce Way entrance already without having to build a new road?
They're looking to separate out this building, give it its own dedicated access point, and separate it from the existing office use that's at the front of the site.
So their address is Commerce Ave, Commerce Way.
This building will be addressed Portsmouth Boulevard.
It'll, what?
It will have a Portsmouth Boulevard address.
Okay, so, were you done? I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, go ahead then, sorry.
Yep. You were saying we're going to get a lot of area out of the buffer, a lot of impervious surface out of the buffer. I would like the numbers of how much you're taking out of the buffer and how much you're adding to the buffer. Or actually, not adding to the buffer, but adding as impervious surface, because the parking lot has grown and you have that driveway.
Yeah, so the driveway is not in the buffer.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is it's still impervious surface.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're adding impervious surface, so I want to know how much impervious surface you're adding and how much you're taking away.
Yeah, and that will all be included in the formal site review application. That's information that gets input into that as far as impervious existing, impervious proposed, percent impervious. It's all part of that formal application process that we'll have to go through.
Can you point out, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are you done?
Yeah, you go.
So I drove out and looked at this, and I was like, why are they putting in another driveway? So is there a reason, other than change of address, that you are not using? Because all of the parking spaces align so that you have an avenue clear from when you drive in on on Commerce Way, you drive right through and you can go right to the back of where that new building is going to be. And right now, there are trees in that area where the driveway is. And what you're going to do is end up putting a turning lane. And so that row of trees that divides the two lanes on, what is it?
Portsmouth
Portsmouth Boulevard.
Yeah, that's going to have to get taken out. And there's residential on the other. And it's like, we spent a lot of money, I'm guessing, putting in those trees, and now you're asking to take a whole lot out to put in a turning lane when you literally take 1 more minute to go up, take a left, and then a quick left, and then you just drive through the driveway. And I don't understand for the life of me why you need another driveway. And I'm sorry, but I just got really angry when I saw this plan or saw this in person after seeing the plan. So anyway, sorry. But can you explain? Because it makes no sense to me. There are trees all over and you're more porous space, so.
Yeah, I
anyway.
mean, it's just what the applicant's looking to do, and all this will get reviewed through TAC, planning board, site review process. It's gonna come back to you folks for the formal conditional use permit application, so at this point, we're just kind of collecting feedback and bringing it back to the project team and going from there.
So is there a reason why you're adding you haven't given me a good reason. Are they expecting?
It's not a question I can give you an answer to today.
All right.
Samantha's got her hand up.
Sorry.
Samantha's hand up.
Commissioner Collins, or Vice Chair?
Yeah, so 210 Commerce Way and 230 Commerce Way are owned by the same Kane company, is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure of the actual entity that owns each individual lot.
Okay, I know they're each individual LLCs, like 210 LLC and 230 LLC, but I'm pretty sure the mailing address is the same. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
they're both the Kane company.
Yes, correct. I
I'm
just don't know
just-
the exact entity that owns each, but yes, they are.
Yeah,
Common ownership.
so I guess my comment or my suggestion is if there's any way to remove, more pavement out of the buffer on the other property, I forget which one now, we're on
210 is the one on the bottom of this page. 230 is the one
on
where.
210, because there is a fair amount of parking that's in that buffer there. If there's any way for the two to work together to, help out the buffer, it's just a suggestion I would make, and I think it would go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Questions? Commissioner Jankowski?
Yeah, I'll really emphasize that as well. I agree that I didn't see a need for another driveway out there when I went out and looked around as well. So, if there's ways that you can reduce some of the parking, that would be good.
Other questions?
Survey.
Survey? Oh, curbing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so Brendan alluded to this, and I think I glossed over it probably a little too quickly. So the existing parking lot does not have curbing. Everything from this site, all sheet flows. I don't know exactly where the high point is, but most of the rear part of the site, sheet flows from kind of the middle of the page. Might as well use this pointer, from somewhere in this, and it all sheet flows back and off into this wetland. So yes, part of this, we will be adding curbing to the, basically from where all the dark gray hatching is, all this will be curbed so we can collect it and then treat it before discharging it. So, I'd say about half of this impervious that's on the site now that's untreated will be treated as part of this before being discharged. So
Yeah, I think important part of this is making sure there's no filtration in that stream that connects, So, it would be good to have some stormwater treatment.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, this would be a significant improvement over what's there now, which is nothing.
Oh, I did want to say, in contrast to my anger about the driveway thing, I was glad to see that that you're planning to remove asphalt from that the plan includes removing the asphalt, quite a bit of the parking lot out of the buffer zone. So
Yeah, I
I
think-
appreciated that when I saw it on paper, but anyway.
The preliminary numbers I have, which again are subject to us getting the revised survey, there's about 3,000 in there now. And this layout that's shown here has 750 square feet, so it's about a 2,300 square foot reduction in pavement within the buffer. And then we have about 5,500 square feet of area we're showing here that we're going to do some restoration, so some sort of conservation seed mix, native plantings, that sort of thing that would be part of the CUP application.
Thank you. Vice Chair Collins?
Yeah, you show on your plan a proposed stormwater treatment unit that then pipes to an outfall that is, looks like it's right at the edge of the wetlands. I don't know if it needs to go that far, just something to look at if the outfall was, if that pipe didn't go as far in the outfall, you know, was somewhere more in the buffer as opposed to right on the edge of the wetlands. I don't know if that's appropriate, but just something to look at.
Yeah, that's something for sure we'll look at, and when we get into detailed design, and obviously doing whatever we can to minimize, you know, the length of the run we have to put in the buffer to actually outlet it.
Do you have a schedule for when you guys think you might be doing this?
So I believe we were getting the survey was done this week. So we'd probably our formal submission 6 weeks from now, maybe.
6 weeks from now?
I mean, yeah, it's rough guess, but
Okay.
so is it probably April maybe?
And
And that'd be for TAC, and then we'd be back in front of you formally for the CUP.
okay. And it seems like most of the commissioners went out there, but I don't know if we'd be able to do a site visit, a formal one, or,
I'd leave that up to you guys. It's,
yeah.
I don't see why we couldn't.
I can schedule something if you want.
You guys want to
Yes.
do that together?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Tanner?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I really feel like that roadway has to go. I know it's not in the buffer, but it's added impervious surface, and you're taking down all those trees. And so the thing is that you've got to compensate. You've got to do something with all those trees being removed. I see absolutely no landscaping here, and putting down a conservation seed mix in the buffer that's been disturbed is, you know, just not adequate, my way of thinking.
Yeah, and we do intend to, there will be a landscape plan as part of the formal submission. Again, this is all preliminary, so.
Yep.
I just want to clarify too, the use of the building, you're saying the bottom floor is going to
First
be.
floor will be a vet. We need to get a special exception for that, but that's the plan. And then the second floor would be general office space.
So just to note that, to confirm that they don't need any outside space at all for the vet clinic, for the,
I mean, that would get worked out with them as we go through detailed design. If they did, we would have to find a spot for it on the site and provide whatever their requirements and whatever, you know, requirements may come out of any additional site process, CUP process as far as that goes. I know we did get a request at TAC work session yesterday about putting a fence up in that along the rear of the building, kind of between the rear of this building and Market Basket, to kind of assist with keeping animals and pets out of the wetland and any sort of trash or debris that might be
Yeah.
blowing in the parking lot. And
yeah, because that area is always a mess.
and so that was a request we got yesterday from TAC.
Yes.
Yeah, there's usually a crematory associated with veterinary clinics as well, and so I'm not sure how that's handled. I understand that that must be part of the special exception.
A lot of times they'll take them off-site so just to confirm, that would be good
Yeah,
to
I would
confirm they're not
imagine
gonna
that
do-
would come up during the special exception. I've not heard of them wanting to do that on this site. But I'm sure that would be a question that would be raised when they go for a special exception.
That would be good, yes.
And another consideration is snow removal. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
have to be off-site because you can't dump it into the wetland, so it needs to go somewhere else.
Yep.
Yes.
I have a question regarding best practices for asphalt impervious surfaces near wetlands, and whether there's been any kind of investigation of alternative ways. I appreciate the treatment of the stormwater However, from my limited experience with parking lots near wetlands, there are some options that are sometimes more expensive, but much better for the wetlands. And I don't know if this body has recommendations for that, but that would be something that I think is worth considering.
Yeah, do you want to speak to the conditions of the site for that? Water table?
Well, I don't know specifically what alternatives you'd be referring to. I mean, there would be some sort of maintenance plan involved with this, so pavement sweeping, as far as the asphalt is kind of the big one, which would typically be a biannual spring, fall situation to get any sediment buildup off the surface to keep it from even getting into the treatment system. The curbing that we discussed earlier that we're installing is going to keep all the surface runoff from actually being able to make it to the wetland before it gets into a treatment system. And there'd be a maintenance plan involved with the treatment system and the collection system as well. So, a combination of all those things, that's kind of the standard design for parking lots at this point. I don't really know of any other alternatives.
Well, and I found that there's more, and this is, there can be more porous options that allow the water table to fill up rather than running down, though if it's a very toxic site, that can be a problem, so.
Yeah, so like a porous wouldn't be allowed on a site that had any sort of contamination, which I don't believe this site does. The issue we'd run into with that on this site is how shallow the ledge is. And if the water went through the pavement, it's just going to hit the ledge and just follow the ledge right out, and you're not getting any treatment out of it.
With porous pavement, we have to put layers of stone under it, so it actually has to differ. So if they have an issue with the ledge, they have to break it off. It would be. Porous pavement requires a lot of maintenance, or it doesn't work.
I can speak to the comment too. Our ordinance, they're not doing a lot of new pavement in the buffer. If it was new pavement in the buffer, our ordinance does require that they provide porous pavement where there's new pavement in the buffer, unless they can demonstrate that they can't, like the water table's too high or something like that. So anywhere there's new pavement in the buffer, we require that they either provide it or demonstrate why they can't. So just so you're aware of that. It's not necessarily a big issue on this site because it's all out of the buffer, almost all out of the buffer, but on a site where it is in the buffer, that would be a requirement.
Would the new driveway be?
The new driveway's out of the
Subject to
buffer as
that.
well, so it wouldn't be a requirement. I mean,
Okay.
you can ask them to look at it, but the requirement is for when it's in the buffer.
Yeah, Melissa. Any other comments or questions? So we'll come away with a site visit, and do you need kind of a summary of all these comments?
I've been taking notes, and I think I got most of it covered. And then if we have a sidewalk schedule, we'll obviously have more discussion then.
Okay, that sounds great.
So as far as the site walk, I know maybe this isn't the best month. You said 6 weeks you might be resubmitting?
I mean, that's just a guess. That if the surveyors were out there today, it's probably a couple weeks till we actually get the survey in hand.
Okay.
And then probably another couple weeks before. We can do it at any point. I think,
So-
the next few days we're going to be getting quite a bit of melting.
Yeah.
Does mid-March sound like a time to shoot for you guys?
For
Maybe
us.
it'll be better then, weather-wise?
You think? I don't know. I like the fact that you
I-
said the
yeah.
first week, we've got melting.
Melting,
you know?
yeah. We could do it soon. Try-
We can do it sooner. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Try not to have snow cover. Yeah,
So, what do you think? When do you think? We'll try to schedule it as soon as we can then? Is that what you want me to do?
yeah, unless there's another storm in the prediction, I guess. What do you?
Going to be 49 out tomorrow.
Yeah, 50 on
Yeah, 50 on Saturday.
Saturday.
All right, we'll shoot for us, we'll get a doodle poll out and see how soon we can do it. We won't wait. How about that? Might not be right away, but at least we'll keep it moving.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Good comments.
So those trees are just for the.
Next item on the agenda
Looks like they're not that old.
is other business, and I added a couple of things, just because I had mentioned at our last meeting that under business, we try to keep the conservation lands update on the agenda, just to keep us reminded of it. So I'm wondering, I'll put you on the spot first, Peter, if you
That's
want to,
fine.
and then I
Yep.
know others might have updates on.
So I've briefly emailed back and forth with Jess, haven't gone anywhere with that yet, but we're gonna talk about areas. You and I talked about looking at the Het property, and you, I think, can talk about that. I may have something to report, I can't say right now, on the one that Alice and I want to look at, the Chase home, but right now I don't have anything to say on it.
Okay, thank you.
So, a little bit of movement.
Yeah, a little bit of movement. And then Ted, did you have anything on yours? I think
I've been in pretty constant touch with SALT about what they're doing with the land trust. And I think we just spoke last week again, too. And, you know, they made the offer out to the owner, and they're kind of waiting for the owners to come back.
Great.
Okay. And then the only, sorry? Is that it?
Yeah, that's-
Thank you. And then mine was the corner of, was like map number 5, I think, the corner of Banfield and Peverly Hill Road. And it's like 8.8 acres. It is part of the Het property, so I just researched the owner and trying to draft a letter. At your suggestion, maybe a letter rather than a call, so they have time to kind of think about it before sending it out. So I'm working on that. And I will run that by you. I don't know if anybody else has any input for ideas on letters or anything like that. I'm kind of just drafting it now.
Now, I have a question about, you know, this property that Ted's talking about.
this is what
If the land trust is involved with that, do we even want to do anything with it? I mean,
Right.
they might need financial assistance.
Yeah, they'll probably look for some funding.
Peter, could you have Isaac send this map to, you haven't seen this before?
No.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about for properties to try to conserve, and we've been working on it intermittently over the last 6 or 7 months, and we've actually gone out and visited some of these properties, and, you know, some people have taken responsibility to knock on the door of the owner and approach them about any possibilities. So these are ones we kind of identified in a broad, big sense.
Yeah, no problem.
So there are a few, there's the Banfield Road one that you just mentioned is also part
A
of this.
few around it, yeah, and I'll give you the list and where, and the map and a little
Great.
background.
Okay.
And we're trying to schedule some training for new members. We're a little behind with the new planning director, but we'll get something set up
Thank you.
for you
Isaac,
guys.
yeah, Isaac was in
I know
here.
it's hard when you haven't
Told
really
us.
had the orientation or anything, but you guys are
Okay.
doing great.
But Ted, can you just rehash the one that you're working on a little bit?
What's that?
He's not supposed to talk about it.
Yeah, they really want us to talk about it as
All
little as
right.
possible.
That's why we keep going that way. All right. And then, anything else on that, conservation lands? No? Any other business? No? I did have one other thing that I had, which was on legislation. There's a group that gets together every couple of months. It's a kind of a work group that is for different conservation commissions in the coastal area, so Hampton, Rye, Seabrook, Portsmouth, I think Portsmouth, Durham, there's a couple of them that do it, Northampton. And there was an update from Conservation Association, New Hampshire Conservation Association, from Barbara Richter on legislation that's going on. A lot of it's kind of gotten far along at this point, but there was one in particular, which was HB 307, that has been passed by both the House and the Senate. So at this point, she was asking people to write letters to the governor. And I can send out the information and the link to all the bills, but this is the first one on the list, but this would prevent any municipality from regulating the sale or use of discharge of firearms for any reason on town-owned land. And it has passed the House and the Senate. She has like a template for a letter that we can use if we want to send one together. But also as individuals on any of this legislation, you can write letters or go in, and you can go onto the website and comment there, too. You just have to make sure that you say that you're doing it as an individual and not as a, you can say you're on the Conservation Commission, but you're not representing the Conservation Commission
So,
if you
I
do
mean,
that individually.
The city of Portsmouth has a regulation, I thought, that you couldn't discharge a firearm within 500 feet of a residence or something, isn't that true?
Yeah, so I don't know, do you know, Peter, about that?
I think there's
Like-
regulations about what you can't hunt with a rifle on city-owned land, and yeah, there are regulations on setbacks. I don't, if it's
I
500
know,
feet.
Jones Ave has some signs up. I don't know if they reference an RSA or anything like that, but,
I'd have to look that one up, but I think it doesn't prohibit hunting on city property, that's for sure. But it does have some restrictions on what you can hunt with, and it probably has setback distances. I thought those were state setback distances.
yeah, I think they are.
Yeah.
That was 107?
307.
HB
Oh,
307.
307.
307.
307, okay, that's what I missed, okay.
Yeah, and there were quite a few other ones that she had too, but I'll send them out to everybody.
Okay, yeah.
But she had like 7 or 8 that were really kind of, one's on shoreline protection, one's actually on local regulations, on regulations for municipal boards to hold virtual meetings without the executive order from the governor, which I thought was sort of interesting to try to do that, because we obviously can't do that at this point because of he has not made an order that we can, executive order that we can, so. Some that have to do with prime wetlands, making them include more connecting streams and rivers in the prime wetlands evaluation. Something to do with cyanobacteria blooms, doing more research on that. So those are all kind of relevant to us, so it's good if we have an opportunity to comment. If we want to do something together as a Conservation Commission and send in one letter, we have to vote on it. So I can check on that too, if anybody's interested in more information, but I can send those out to everybody.
Do you know how quickly this bill is moving through the process?
That
Is
one-
it on the governor's desk?
Yeah, so that one's
Is
going
it?
quickly. So what I'll do is I'll send out the information. I think people might individually want to comment on that pretty quick, because it's got to go to the governor at this point and ask him to veto it. So it's a good question.
I think it's interesting because this state prides itself on the government not interfering, and yet local control is lost if you get these things from the state that, tie your hands, even though you don't want to have, firearms and carried on city-owned land. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's ironic,
Yeah.
totally.
Sort of along that irony line. But the whole definition, like the CUP requirements, that was in one of the memos, and I've gone through them on other things, by item. But our own boards don't seem to know the definition of a buffer zone in terms of, like, I was at one hearing and one of the it was city council, and one of the council members said publicly that it wasn't a problem for human interaction to be in a buffer zone. And I'm like, that's pretty much the whole point of the buffer zone, is to keep human activity out of it. Granted, there are things where they've already got the human activity, and that's what the boards were, kind of skirt around.
I think it's to balance those uses, right? I mean, it's about.
But it
where
was
the-
like, recreation was fine, this and that, and the greenway is based on the fact that it is fine to have human activity inside a buffer zone, but that pretty much negates the whole point of the buffer zone, at least to the definition I've always known it as. So
Well, the
it would be
ordinance,
nice if the city, and I don't know if the Conservation Commission is, if we're the ones who start this, but it seems, everybody seems to pick and choose what they want out of the definition of a buffer. There's a whole, those 6 items of requirements to meet the CUP, and yet nobody is talking about the buffer zone in the same way. And I get frustrated with that time and time again, and the board members change from one to the other, and everybody's sort of picking, and even, with the city, when they're suing the Toyota ownership guy, they're bringing in all this stuff about, pretty much the way I think of it as a buffer zone is that you're not supposed to have human activity in it, and then yet the planning board approves 105 Bartlett and
I
other
can tell
stuff.
you
So-
that the new planning director is very interested in providing training on what the conditional use permit is intended for and what is in there, and the definitions are in the ordinance certainly very clearly, and how things can happen. So that'll be coming in terms of training and I think the planning board and the conservation commission probably will do that together, so you get that opportunity for cross-board discussion and that kind of thing. So I can at least tell you that is ongoing, but this might not be the place to talk about it right now.
Yep,
but-
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be great. I think that's needed. There's so many new people, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And she's new.
And
so
even
she-
some of the old people have, they've got an older vision of what something might be and not sort of up to date on environmental.
Yep.
And like a lot of people talk about in terms of stormwater runoff, it's like that's not the only reason for a buffer zone. And like we're talking about plantings.
Right.
Yeah. And other people don't even think about the vegetation aspect and things like that. So anyway, okay.
That's
Well,
great.
was this out of order for me to bring it up here?
No, it's good
Or
we
is it-
got
okay.
No, I don't think it's order. I
Since
think
I haven't
we've got
had
more-
my orientation,
I just want to
then
let
I
you know,
don't know.
training is on the horizon. So.
No, I think it's an excellent idea to do that. Yes. Commissioner Jankowski.
One more issue. I've been exchanging emails with Brian Getz, and we haven't scheduled a meeting yet, but should I just let people know when we're getting together? If anybody else wants to sit in, this is the
Yeah.
gentleman that's overseeing an education program or developing one for the city on organic land care. He's the stormwater guru for Public Works. His name is Brian Getz. And they have a whole education effort about stormwater, and they're going to combine that effort with information on organic land care.
If you are going to let people know, I'd say go through Isaac or me. And
Okay.
then if it's enough members that it's a quorum, we'll need to advertise it as a public meeting.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Ted. All right, anything else? Questions or, okay, we're going to do a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn the meeting?
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. And I think we can just say all
Yeah,
those in
I
favor?
think you're done.
All those in favor?
You can call it.
Yes.
As the chair, you have the prerogative to say the name.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.